Quick tip, if you come to the British Museum to see the Rosetta Stone, then when you come in, turn right, go into the Enlightenment Gallery and walk straight through to your left, and you will see that they have a scale copy of the Rosetta Stone without the massive crowds around it, that you're more than welcome to look at and even touch, understand it in more detail, but only when you've got the full experience. Go around the corner, the other side of the museum, and see it after the crowd of about 10 deep is in front of you. Quick tip, British Museum. This is the first edition of the book by Jean Polyon, explaining the way that he actually worked out how hieroglyphs meant anything, based on obviously the Rosetta Stone in the British Museum. There's a bit of information about it here. A snip at £54,000, incredibly important and rare document. Allegedly, when he first discovered it, he told his sister he fainted and was in a dead faint for about 3 days before he woke up and revealed to the world that he'd cracked the code. There are dangerous caterpillars in this tree, according to the sign here. I'm in Dulwich Park. Let's look at the sign. It actually warns us not to go under the tree, but I'm going to risk it anyway. They are called processionary caterpillars, and here is what they say. Do not enter the area under this tree. These caterpillars will cause a nasty rash if you come into contact with their hairs. This issue has been reported, so please bear with us while we deal with the matter. I wouldn't really go bear under. Obviously, I don't know how to spell the correct word bear. But anyway, this is wonderful, Dulwich Park, and the dangerous processionary caterpillars are somewhere under the tree. I can tell immediately that the king is not at home. How can you tell? 2 reasons. One, there's only one guard in the sentry boxes outside the palace, and secondly, they're flying the Union flag or the Union Jack outside. By the way, these guards, you can tell by the buttons in 3s, they belong to the Scots Guard, which are the oldest of all the 5 regiments that guard the monarch, but not the most senior. They're the 3rd, for various reasons. Okay, so the flag that used to fly outside here until 1997 was this one, called the Royal Standard. And the standard is also featured on the gates of Buckingham Palace as well, just here. And it represents the 4 nations: England, Scotland, the Lion, Ireland, and then Wales, which is a principality and therefore doesn't have its own separate flag. And until 1997, this was all that flew outside the palace. But then a disaster happened. Princess Diana, Paris, Dodi, etc. And at the beginning, the royals didn't want to acknowledge it, as she was no longer a member of the royal family. There's a famous film called The Queen, starring Helen Mirren, which describes what happened. Essentially, it took the Prime Minister, Tony Blair, to ring the palace up and tell them, get your finger out, at which point they decided to fly this flag at half-mast for not just Diana's funeral, but any disaster, including Grenfell or the Queen's death herself last year. And instead, this flag is only flown when the royals are actually in the building, as it were. By the way, every 10 minutes or so, the guards have to relieve their tired legs by marching up and down a bit. This member of the Scots Guards is doing so. But that's the story behind why this is the royal flag flying here, which did fly here when Queen Elizabeth II passed away last year as well. And I was here for that. Look at my other video about it, which has had millions of views on TikTok. So, 2 ways to tell: the number of guards and what flag is flying. There's no name on this bust or this obelisk anywhere, but I've just worked out who it is. His name is George Dance, and he was a famous architect. He created this square that we are in now, called Finsbury Circus. In the year 1606 it was created, so he developed it later rather, but it was the first ever public square in London, much earlier than the developments in the West End like Covent Garden were in the 1620s. This obelisk is using his face, but it was actually put up here in the 80s following the dreadful fire at King's Cross, which killed so many people's lives. It's designed to act as a fumes ventilation shaft on behalf of the underground that runs just underneath here as well. It's a bit of a shame really that they haven't actually put the name of Mr. Dance on here as well, as he was responsible for so many great buildings in the City of London, including the Mansion House, the Lord Mayor's House, and his son. There were two George dancers, the elder and the younger, I'm not sure which one this is, as well as the front of the Guildhall itself, the portico in the design called Hindustani Gothic. Anyway, if you come to Finsbury Circus in the City of London, you can see this, and it is George Dance. So this is a fascinating tombstone from 1674. It says, look at this bit. It says, "Reader, do not with hasty folly presume to tread this ground is holy. Here underneath lies one so pure, Rome's faction could not her allure." Rome's faction being the Catholic Church. "On her Redeemer's only merit she did rely by him to inherit. Long sickness did her body pine, at last drawn up where she doth shine. Yet her four littles where now they sing eternal anthems unto heaven's high King." So this is to Joan Wilson, and clearly it was at a time when Catholic religion was viewed as being anathema. There's one more at the end here. I'll speed this up for... Right, so have a look at this one. Thomas Stagg. That is all. So there's no reference to religion in this anywhere. And I'm wondering if this guy maybe even might have been an atheist. And not so subtle commentary by saying that is all, on his view on the meaninglessness of life, perhaps. Although why it would have been in a church, I don't know. Anyway, this is called St. Giles Gripplegate, and the entire church interior was destroyed by the Nazis in the Blitz in the Second World War. But all these original memorials have been saved and put back in here. And I find them fascinating. This is the strangest place in London. And you know I know a lot about London. Let's have a look. It's called Novelty Automation. It's in Tudor House, and it's full of amazing inventions by this eccentric scientist, Mr. Tim Hunkin, who is over here repairing one of them at the moment. So all of these have different experiences. You've got... And right, it starts to move up and down. The window opens. Okay, a bizarre horse comes out at you for your dream. Still not waking up. Next thing happens in your dream is a big snake comes and threatens you. So, okay, the horse is at the window as well. And your eyes come out on stalks. And eventually you wake up screaming. To here, and see how long you can push the button for before you give up out of fear, because the dog slabbers red hot.
The operative too.
Oh God, so you put your foot in here, and something happens to you. I can't really guess what might be. You've got a divorce instructions here. You try and pull apart your possessions, and then you can, when it's really important, you spin this to get extra surge of rage. Alien chamber. Not sure what this is. Anyway, this is full of absolutely amazing inventions, and that was Mr. Tim Hunkin himself in the back office there. But please come to this place to find some absolutely incredible and really fun and inventive and quite politically, how can I put it, aware, very, very funny experiences. This is a historic doodle. It looks like the sort of thing any of us could make maybe while we're waiting for something to happen. In fact, this was made by the British Prime Minister, David Lloyd George, in 1918, while he was thrashing out with the representative of the US, President Wilson, the peace terms with Germany. Incredibly harsh peace terms, which many people later believed actually contributed to the rise of the Second World War. But this apparent childlike doodle was done by the British Prime Minister while waiting to negotiate the peace terms with Germany. And this document here it details the instructions that were sent, in this case to the, which army is this now? Yeah, to the British 40th Infantry Division, and it says, following message from GHQ begins, ... Hostilities will cease at 11 o'clock, November the 11th, 1918. Troops will stand fast on the line reached at that hour. Defensive precautions will be maintained, and there will be no intercourse of any description with the enemy until receipt of instructions from GHQ. Further instructions follows. So an incredibly emotional end. The 11th hour of the 11th day, 1980, the end of the First World War. Writing this had the author confined to hospital for shell shock because it was such a shocking protest letter against the continuation of the war. In June 1718, the very famous poet Siegfried Sassoon, who was an officer, wrote this letter in which he says, I believe that the war is being deliberately prolonged by those who have the power to end it. I'm a soldier, convinced that I'm acting on behalf of soldiers. I believe this war has now become a war of aggression and conquest. I have seen and endured the sufferings of the troops, and I can no longer be a party to prolonging those sufferings for ends which I believe to be evil and unjust. I'm not protesting against the conduct of the war, but against the political errors and insincerities for which they fighting men are being sacrificed. On behalf of those who are suffering now, I make this protest against the deception which is being practiced on them, since I believe that it may help those to destroy the callous complacence with which the majority of those at home regard the continuation of agonies which they do not share and which they have not sufficient imagination to realize. So after being confined to a hospital with shell shock for treatment, Siegfried Sassoon actually voluntarily returned to the Western Front in 1918. But this is a shocking expose, which was actually read out in Parliament, and he risked heavy punishment for making this declaration. And this is his famous poem. Have you ever noticed this strange pattern on buildings, particularly people's houses, where it comes from worms? It's a style of architectural pattern. It's called vermiculated, which means wormholes, because it's actually designed to look like if you've got a wormery and you have glass, the patterns of the tunnels that they dig in it can be exposed with this exciting relief. Anyway, and it's called vermiculated rustication. So vermiculated from the Latin word verma, from which we get the word worm, with a V changing to W. Rustication, I think it's just to do with being exterior, and it's often used on buildings at the ground floor to protect against collision with trucks or lorries or carts in times when we didn't have internal combustion engines. But this is my street in Peckham, And just looking along the variety of houses here. I'm going to speed up because there's something quite interesting. At certain points they lose it, maybe because of bomb damage in the war, but there's an entire change of the houses just towards the end. So look at the detail as we go along here. I will pause my voice here so I can speed it up. This is a very good quality one. It's like it's being sort of roughly repaired without knowing what it's meant to look like by these people. Anyway, I'll shut up now. And suddenly it changes. And for the rest of the street, we've got this rather attractive, almost, what can I say, it's like almost, is it Viennese style? Copied on the other side of the road as well. And it continues right to the end in this style too. So something changed at this point. I don't know what or when. But these are all late Victorian houses. 1890s maybe. So question for you. What famous author, secretly into all sorts of kinky practices, worked in this office here in the 1930s? Number 11, Throgmorton Avenue. Was it A, George Orwell? Was it B, Ian Fleming? Or was it C, Agatha Christie? The answer is B, Ian Fleming. He worked here in the 1930s for a firm of stockbrokers called Cull & Co. But he was into all sorts of bondage, whipping, biting apparently, with his affair he had with a woman called Edith Morpurgo. And the letters that he wrote to her were recently auctioned, and here is one of the letters. You can see it's got the address on it here of 11 Throgmorton Avenue, 1930 whatever. And these are, it says, I would like to kiss you in all these X's, all these places. This is him again. The father of James Bond 007, a friend in 1934 in Austria, I think. Anyway, these were auctioned for thousands of pounds a while ago. And he claims to have spent most of his time in this office here, throwing his telephone at his colleagues. He wasn't a particularly good stockbroker. He went on to work in naval intelligence eventually. And Winston Churchill set up the SOE, Special Operations Executive, in this very hotel in 1940. And the hotel have now set up a special display case showing some of the ultra-secret equipment that was developed for use by agents undercover in Europe during the Second World War. Just have a look at the things in this cabinet. As you can see here, this is a compass set into studs on a collar. This is the Lysander plane that was used to ferry agents into Europe. There's a bust of Churchill himself, who founded the SOE in this very hotel in 1940. Here are some coins with a concealed knife inside them for close quarters combat. Here is a pilot's brush, which includes a saw and a compass inside it as well. Here are boots, which you would have taken a knife to rip away the upper sections from once you've landed safely to transform themselves into plain shoes. Here is a chess set with a concealed cabinet inside with a compass in it and also a map. There are many, many other things, including this lethal women's hairbrush with a sharp stiletto knife inside it as well, all in the wonderful St. Ermin's Hotel. Want to see the strangest Monopoly game I've ever seen? It's this one. It's a handmade one. Sailors made it for HMS Vernon, and it's called Vernonopoly. I think it's sometime in the 80s, but everything is handmade apart from these printed out notes. It has exactly the same function as a normal game Monopoly, but I think it's been designed to be for shipbound where you need to save stuff from falling over. But instead of all the different parts of London, you've got different sections of naval life passing through in cells, Longmoor, Welfare Fund, Mine-sweeping mines, Portsmouth Harbour, pay best dues, wardroom, sonar club, main gate, etc., etc. They've even got the different values. So it plays just like a normal game Monopoly. I doubt they got a license from the company to do it anyway, but it's fantastically detailed and obviously workable example of a game of Vernonopoly rather. There we go, I love it.
Nice, but one is really gory. It's the American Executioner.
That's the one I'm going to look at next. This is Clive Baker, a collector of incredible automata dating back to some to the Victorian era, all in Portsmouth Dockyard. This is the famous execution. Okay, I'm going to shut up now so you can watch the rest of them. But basically, you go to Portsmouth Dockyard. They're not advertised anywhere. They're all 20 pence a go, and they're all maintained lovingly by him as a real work of passion. I just love going there, and I wish more people would see them as well. This is the execution of a man who tried to set fire to the dockyards. He was a pro-American revolutionary, tried to set fire to the ships in Portsmouth Dockyard, and he was executed. 1, 2, 3, here we go. Push the lever, goodbye. Okay, that's that one. Next is the drunkard's dream, where this man, surrounded by bottles, he's broken into the cellar. Obviously there's a rat coming out. These devils come out of the barrels. He turns his head. What else is there? Yeah, there's the rat again. There's a cobbler coming out of the one next to him. There's a skeleton coming out here. Anyway, I'll shut up, I promise you, and let you watch these for yourselves. I just love them.
Automatique. Pas de mystique. Je sais pas ce que ça veut dire, pas de mystique.
No, I don't at all. I mean, it's come on to a few things there. Your hand denotes a rather masterful nature. 40, not swashing top up a few things. 30, a master rather than servant. Very outspoken. Sex has great caution. All the streets. Your approach to too much of a serious side of life. Oh, that's going on right now, so. I know, yes, yeah.
Okay, pretty good. This is the secret to how auctions used to take place in the ancient coffee houses of London in, well, in this case, the 1760s. So you get an inch or so of candle that you cut off, a full-size candle, and you would light it. Then people would bid, and at the very moment that the candle finally gutted out and stopped, the winning auction prize would take it. This is full of adverts for buy the candle. Look here, buy the candle at Garraway's. Garraway's a very popular place to sell items. Coffee houses were started in 1652 in London. This is about a century or so later, and they're incredibly popular places to sell all sorts of strange imported furs in this case, pipes of farro oil, pickled herrings, etc., etc., lots of fish, sugar, etc., etc. And yeah, it's a very fair way of bidding. And nowadays, people have adopted a similar method that you can't tell when the bid's going to end, so it encourages fair bids entire way through the bidding process. So this is an incredibly interesting ancient newspaper. I've just read this story, by the way. This old man, aged 74, hanged himself a short time before he had married a young woman of 18. A bit suspicious, don't you think? This is a medal awarded to a pigeon, and you can see the pigeon's ring from its foot just along here. This is in the D-Day Museum. It was awarded to a pigeon called Gustav, which is a rather German name in my opinion. Anyway, on the morning of D-Day itself, Gustav flew back to the UK carrying the first message about the landings. The PDSA, as you can see at the top here, or Dickensian medal, is one that's given only to animals for bravery, and it's the equivalent of the Victoria Cross, I suppose, for the animal world. And this, as I said, is in the D-Day Museum in Portsmouth, and it now belongs to a family. It's been loaned to the amazing museum here, which is the D-Day Museum itself in Southsea. But in my opinion, this is one of the most interesting things. This is Gustav himself. He flew 150 miles in 5 hours and landed just around the corner from where we are now. They couldn't send messages by radio in case the Germans were listening in. Some sexist advertising here. So blondes and brunettes can use Shell. By the way, this is a Shell collection of artwork. And then looking journalists, looking very, very serious, obviously important jobs. I suppose it's not to be surprised from the 1930s, but this is a collection of fantastic artwork created by Shell. So it's one of the best creations of commercial art on display in England. This is a member of, I can tell by the way that he is a member of the Scots Guards, because his buttons are in threes and he's got the thistle. Anyway, that's another part of my job. So this is Ben Nicholson, the famous artist who married. This is Edward Ardizone, who, amongst other things, illustrated Stig of the Dump. I'm really sorry about the glare here, by the way. What an incredible piece of work this is. I just love the details of these sailors. Okay, crikey, that's Shell. That was. So shows how fast Shell cars are. Knockless. Sounds like a knockness, obviously. It refers to a knocking sound made by cars if they had something wrong with the engine, which Shell Oil was meant to solve. Okay, around the corner. I'm in Portsmouth, by the way. This is a fantastic poster. No one is known about this guy, so you can pause and read this as well. How beautiful this poster is. Shell for anti-knock, again the same thing. Finally, carbon defeated. So this is meant to refer to the fact that somehow less carbon was used in your engine if you combined Shell oil with petrol. So that's the benefit of that. And also, Shell used to send Valentine's cards to their female customers. Look at this. This is from the 1950s. And they would send anonymously, but obviously you've got the car down here, a suggestion as well. Also the third line, now let the petrol flow like wine, let joyful engines sing. And then at the bottom, we'll motor far and well, for every day is your day now. You can be sure of ... Shell. Shell used to send Valentine's cards to their female customers. Look at this. This is from the 1950s. And they would send anonymously, but obviously you've got the car down here, a suggestion as well. Also the third line, now let the petrol flow like wine, let joyful engines sing. And then at the bottom, we'll motor far and well, for every day is your day now. You can be sure of ... Shell. Hey, I'm at Buckingham Palace. I've got a couple of minutes before my tour starts. I'm going to give you an introduction to this, which incorporates the Royal Standard in the middle, along with the lion on the top, and also the lion on the left, and the unicorn on the right. So what is this? Well, first of all, this is the flag that normally flies above Buckingham Palace whenever a royal is resident, and as you can see today, no one's here, and there's only one guard in each of the pair of sentry boxes outside, which again means no one's here. But what does this include? So the top left, you've got the three lions on the shirt. That's the English flag. Then to its right, our right rather, we have the Scottish rampant lion, solo lion here. Bottom left we have the harp of what was originally Ireland and now with Northern Ireland. And bottom right we have the 3 lions again for Wales. That's because although it's no longer a principality, when the Royal Standard was created, Wales was a principality at that point. Also to the right at the very bottom we have St George piercing the dragon, and then on the left we have the Lion of England. On the right we have the unicorn traditionally representing Scotland. Note that the unicorn is chained. Have you heard the phrase, freeze the balls off a brass monkey? Well, it's because of these ships, people claim. This is the HMS Victory in Portsmouth, and these are the balls. And the brass monkey would be, actually look a little bit like this, made of brass, like a knuckle dusters in a triangle shape with a pyramid of balls on them. And it's claimed that the brass monkey would contract at a different rate in cold weather to the iron cannonball, which meant that if it was really freezing, the cannonball would pop off the brass monkey and roll around the floor dangerously. Well, sadly, I've checked on this and there's absolutely no evidence that this is true. Apparently, first of all, the ships would not have wanted to have their cannonballs stored on deck like that. They would easily roll around anyway. Secondly, if they were exposed to the weather like that, they'd get rusty really easily. And thirdly, it would just be in the way. So people have looked into this. Unfortunately, I've no idea what it means to freeze the balls off a brass monkey. But it's definitely nothing to do with ship life in Georgian times and Admiral Nelson on the Victory. The world is being run by the Illuminati, according to some people, from this building in my street in a quiet suburb of Peckham in southeast London. Why? It's because it's owned by the Rosicrucian Order, also known as the Ancient and Mystical Order of the Rosei Crucii, which in reality was founded in 1915 in America, and it's a mail order mysticism market, but they claim to have their roots back in ancient Egypt, and members they claim in the past have been people like Isaac Newton, Francis Bacon, not the artist, the famous scientist, René Descartes even, and who else as well, Debussy. I think that they might be wrong because I've never seen much activity controlling the world here. In fact, there are links between this secretive organisation and it's claimed even the great devil himself, Aleister Crowley, which isn't really very good, to be honest. Anyway, this is the Order of the Rosy Cross secret Francis Bacon Lodge headquarters in my street in Peckham, and the world is definitely not being run from here. Wouldn't you agree, Frankie? Yes, I do. Human sperm was first discovered as an invisible ink in this very building by, now I kid you not, by this man, Sir Cumming. Right, what happened was he was the very first chief of the Secret Service, and I don't know quite how he discovered that it was, maybe a stroke of luck, as you might say. But he discovered that it works really well. There was one small problem that didn't come out until a bit later. And he sent a message out to all his men, obviously, in the field, which is that every man his own stylus. But unfortunately, what he hadn't catered for is the fact that it goes off. And basically, after a few days out on the paper, it used to give off this incredibly awful smell. So he had to, as it were, withdraw his orders. And that's why we no longer use human sperm as an invisible ink. He was an incredible man, so many more stories. He cut his own leg off with a penknife, allegedly, when trapped in a car accident. Anyway, enough about that. Come on my spy tours and you'll find out all more stories about him. I'm a Harry Potter tour guide, the London Spy, and this is a famous scene from the first film. We are in Leadenhall Market, and this is where Hagrid takes Harry, walks him through these amazing Victorian, sorry about the building works here, Victorian streets. Around the corner here, he says, I've got to get you the things you need to have your first term at Hogwarts. We're going to take you to the bank and then we're going to do some shopping. So they turn the corner here and they walk up towards this white doorway, which is painted black in the film. And it's there that it is the entrance to the Leaky Cauldron, through which they tap some bricks and then it becomes Diagon Alley. Now, one thing that makes my Harry Potter tours different from any other is the magic, because I'm also a member of the Magic Circle, and I have some extremely interesting objects that I share with people on my tours too, as I fumble inside my bag and try and find the special thing I want to share with you today, which is this here. So this, which is what I show on my tours. Okay, it's my version, my copy of the book. Unfortunately, this version of the book is a little bit faulty, because if you look at the back of it, can you see here, it says Philosopher's Stone. Bit of a misprint, which means it's not worth very much money. And also on page 53, I think it is, as well. Here it is. Look at this, it says one wand twice. Another spelling mistake, which just makes this a rather cheap version of the book, because it's obviously got lots of mistakes in it. If you believe that, you believe anything, because what this really means is that this is a genuine first edition, first impression of Harry Potter and the Philosopher's Stone, which for those select people who do come on my tours, I actually sometimes bring out with me if it's not rainy and let them see it. And if you had a garden in World War II, then you would be able to build this kind of shelter. It's called an Anderson shelter, and it would be partly underground, partly above ground, covered with earth and grass, and it would allow you to be allegedly protected from any bombs that fell. But only if you had a garden. What happens if you didn't have a garden? By the way, I lived in the south coast when I was growing up, and we had one of these in our back garden. You built what's called, that was an Anderson shelter. The alternative would be this. This is a Morrison shelter, and you use it as a table in the daytime. But then if there was an air raid, you'd crawl underneath, you'd have these metal rails to protect you, and you could sleep a family inside it basically. They were for free actually to lower income households who didn't have gardens, and you would keep blankets inside them and clothes, and it was designed to withstand the whole of the upper floor of the house falling in on top of you to protect you. And they did test them, and apparently they did actually work. So they possibly saved hundreds of lives at least by being strong enough to withstand the whole floor of a building falling on top of you. This is the original oak door to number 10 Downing Street, the home and office of Britain's Prime Ministers since 1735. The brass letterbox on the front of the door is engraved with the title First Lord of the Treasury. It's a historic title that really belongs to the Prime Minister. Now, this door was replaced, it was wooden, in 1991 following an IRA attack on Downing Street. And ever since then, we have a new door. By the way, do you know that the Prime Minister doesn't even have keys to the number 10? And the door cannot be opened from the outside. Look, there's no keyhole here at all. A security guard is always on duty to let people in, only from the inside. I never knew until today the secret language of UK coins. So open up your pockets and have a look with me at what the coins mean. There's a symbol on the back that I literally knew nothing about until today. Right, so put them all, so you might notice they've all got this sometimes rather strange stuff on the back. Right, the 5p goes in the middle, the 50p goes right underneath it, and then the 10p goes top left, the 2p goes top right. Can you start to see a shape appearing with these lines here? And then the 1p goes bottom middle left, and finally the 20p goes here. Look at these little dotted lines, sorry about my OCD here, around here. Can you see the shape they form? So it's the royal standard, the royal shield. You've got here the harp of what's now Northern Ireland, originally Ireland, from the United Kingdom. You've got the rampant lion of Scotland, the three lions on the shirt for England, and because it was a principality of England at the point when the royal standard was made, this represents Wales underneath. So it was a man called Matthew Dent who won a competition in 2008 4,000 entries for it, and he was given £35,000 for doing it, which I think is well worth the genius design behind this, because literally I'd seen this pattern before, no idea what it meant, and now it's all come together. And here we go, the 4 countries that make up the United Kingdom on the royal standard. This shield are on full display. This is the original Hellfire Club. Let me tell you about it. Francis Dashwood, in about 1730, picked this tavern, the George and Vulture, in the centre of the little alleyways of the City of London, to be the London branch meeting of the Hellfire Club. They were a secret society who performed obscene parodies of Christian acts, amongst other unspeakable things, and they met here. So this is the original Hellfire Club, as made famous, of course, in Stranger Things. Some of the finest views in London are from this bridge. It's in St James's Park, and just look over here. In the distance is Buckingham Palace, where I'm going to be guiding in a few minutes, and this is the statue of Queen Victoria, famously with the nose that fell off. Walking further across the park, a few swans over there. We turn in the other direction, and in the distance we see this wonderful fountain. Behind it is a sort of fairy tale, like Disney-like or Hogwarts-style turrets of Whitehall, and immediately in front of us we have Whitehall, which is fronted by Horse Guards Parade. This was famously created as a tilt yard by King James, no, not King James, King Henry VIII, what am I talking about, who had jousting on there, his favourite sport. And finally, in the far distance, we have the London Eye and the Ministry of Treasury in front of it, I believe. And in the distance, you can just about make out on here these wonderful penguins. Penguins, what am I talking about? Penguins, pelicans, who were gifted originally to King Charles II in 1664 by the Russian ambassador. This is the secret name that MI6 used, Minimax Fire Extinguisher Company, to pretend that they were not actually MI6 or SIS when they were in this building. They were in here from 1926 right up until 1964, headquarters of external spy agencies for the UK. And they always like to pretend that they had a cover name. So if you look in the James Bond books, for example, James Bond's Secret Intelligence Service, they call themselves the Universal Exports. And but it was based on the idea of calling themselves the Minimax Fire Extinguisher Company. But everyone knew what it secretly was. It was not really that effective, so they removed it sometime in the 40s, I believe. Anyway, if you come here and look up Minimax Fire Extinguisher, that's exactly what you find. Other things about this place is that over the road, underneath that rather unattractive sculpture there, used to be allegedly a blind match seller, who in fact was apparently an agent for the Germans in the run-up to the Second World War. A blind match seller, not so blind because they were secretly taking notes, it's alleged, about who was entering and leaving this building. However, the director of MI6 lived in a building just behind here, and he was lucky enough not to need to come in the front door because there was actually a secret tunnel in his rather fabulous house at number 21 Queen Anne's Gate, just behind here, which he used to enter it. So he wouldn't have been caught out by the blind match-selling spy in this cubbyhole over here. I have a historical artefact in this connected to this, which I used for the first time yesterday in my tour of the Churchill War Rooms. Let's unbox this and have a look at what's inside. Very exciting. This dates from 1926, and it's a government official newspaper that was edited by Churchill himself. It's called the British Gazette. Please pass this copy on display at 1 penny, and it was officially designed by the government, which he was a member of at the time. This is the 6th edition, to break the general strike, which had been called by the miners' unions and supported by about 1.5 million workers across the country, to try and stand up for the attack on the wages of the miners at the time that the government was attempting to push through. And this was published edited by Winston. It's full of anti-union propaganda, claiming that it's all revolutionary activity designed to pull down the state, and you know, hostility to anything associated with supporting the striking action. If you open it up, it did include other news as well, but it said anyone who attacked the police is a coward. People were fined and sentenced for false news. Well, false news, we've heard that more recently as well. And actually, sentenced to 6 weeks hard labour for claiming that soldiers were supporting the strike. So I took this out on my tour yesterday and shared it with my guests, who were incredibly impressed to see it here, because it is a piece of history, including the movements of the monarch at the time. But this was edited by Churchill, and it's an anti-union activity designed to suppress. And this was on the last day that the strike actually worked. The day after this, the strike was called off and the unions were broken. So a little bit of history in your hands. So I'm at Khan's department store in Peckham, and it hides a great secret. So behind this sort of nice exterior, but they bought it and they realised there was something special in it. And Mr. Khan is here somewhere. Can't see him anywhere. He's hiding. No, he's behind there speaking to a customer. There's Mr. Khan. But look, he came over here from Afghanistan, I think, and when they started to develop this shop, he's found these amazing lights up here. It's actually a 1930s Art Deco masterpiece inside this shop. He's just had it restored with the local architect Benny O'Looney a few years ago, and this is part of the splendour of what used to be this huge department store called Holdren's. Isn't it wonderful? And you never expect it to be here. Now there's a big poster at the front of the shop that explains a bit more about the background to it, which I'm going to record now, and you can then pause it and read that through. But if you're in Rye Lane in Peckham, please drop into Khan's store. It's a wondrous place, and just read this and see more about the history of how it was developed, what its plans were originally, and how it looks now. I'm David Herrick, I am the London Spy. This is London, and please follow me if you like the videos. Click on the links to follow my TikTok, and come and see me at one of my tours.